Okay, so like imagine this. You're getting ready for this super important meeting about the whole Russia-Ukraine thing, and you really want to be like the most informed person there, you know? But like, who actually has time to read through all those reports and stuff?
Right.
That's kind of where we come in with this deep dive, you know?
Yeah.
We're going to break down this breaking news piece from the Associated Press. It literally just came out today, October 28th, 2024. And get this, it's about North Korean troops maybe fighting in Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you heard right. Thousands of them, potentially.
Hmm. That's a whole other level. Like, I mean, it's way beyond what we heard before about North Korea just sending like ammo and supplies to Russia. Right. This is
Right.
a way bigger deal. It's almost like they're teaming up,
Yeah.
like a united front or something.
And it's not just about, what's happening over there right now either.
Right.
Think about that whole BRICS summit thing a little while ago. Brazil, Russia,
Mhm.
India, China, South Africa.
Right.
They're all basically trying to, like, change the world order as we know it. And now this whole troop deployment thing just throws a massive wrench into that whole power dynamic.
Absolutely.
We could be talking about some, like, seriously big changes happening on a global scale.
Totally. And it's like another piece of the puzzle.
Hmm.
It just makes everything even more complicated. We can't forget about what this means for Ukraine's forces. I mean, they're already stretched thin as it is.
For sure.
Adding thousands of North Korean troops to the mix. That's a major escalation, no doubt.
Yeah, the source actually says that some of these troops have already been seen in Russia's Kursk region, right on the border with Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
And that area has seen some heavy fighting.
It's like they're not even trying to hide it.
No kidding. So what do you think this tells us about what they'll be doing in the conflict?
Well, I'd say there's a good chance they'll be involved in direct combat, probably trying to help the Russians defend that area.
Yeah.
Kursk is super important strategically for Russia.
Mhm.
If they start losing ground there, it could be like a domino effect.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a total shift for North Korea, too. I mean, usually they just supply weapons and stuff. This is boots on the ground, a
Yeah.
real sign that they're committed.
And what about the U.S.? How are they responding to this?
Well, the Pentagon has been super clear about it. There are no limits on using U.S. weapons against these North Korean troops.
Right.
So now the big question is, could this turn into a direct conflict between, U.S.-backed Ukrainian forces and North Korean soldiers? Are we, like, on the edge of a proxy war here?
It's definitely a risky situation. If you've got North Korean troops actively fighting against Ukrainians who are using U.S. weapons,
Uh-huh.
the chance of things escalating quickly is very real. A proxy war where the big powers are basically fighting each other indirectly through these other countries.
Right.
It's not out of the question at all.
And then to add even more to the mix, the source brings up the upcoming U.S. presidential election.
Oh, yeah. Think about it. If Trump wins, that could totally change how much the U.S. supports Ukraine. Imagine how that would ripple out, not just in Ukraine, but all over the world.
A reduction in U.S. military aid could make Russia and its allies feel like they can do whatever they want.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might even encourage North Korea to get even more involved. It's a super delicate situation with the potential to create this power vacuum that Russia and China would definitely try to take advantage of.
For sure.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah, it is.
It's almost like we're at this, this fork in the road with everything going on.
Yeah.
This whole North Korea thing happening right as the U.S. is about to pick a new president.
Right.
It's wild, and that decision could really change, how everything unfolds.
It's like throwing gasoline on a fire that's already out of control.
Yeah, exactly.
Whoever wins that election, they're walking into a world where the whole balance of power is shifting like crazy.
For sure.
Talk about pressure.
And it goes way beyond just Ukraine.
Yeah.
This could be like the beginning of a whole new Cold War. Russia, China, and maybe even North Korea, all forming this like super powerful group against the U.S. and its allies.
Okay, well, let's break that down for a sec. What would that even look like in real life,
Right.
Like, what kind of impact would that have?
Well, think about it. You'd probably see a lot more military cooperation between those countries, like joint exercises, sharing intelligence, maybe even coordinating like troop movements and stuff.
Uh-huh.
Economically, they could try to stop using the U.S. dollar as much and create their own financial systems instead.
So that could totally change global trade and finance.
It really could. It would be a huge shift.
So we're talking like major disruptions to the global economy. Could this even affect like the tech world?
Yeah.
Would we end up with a totally split internet with different rules and stuff in different places?
Those are definitely real possibilities. Picture a world where all the supply chains are broken up.
Right.
And technology is developing in completely different ways depending on where you are.
It's almost like going backwards, you know? For years, everyone's been talking about globalization and how we're all getting more connected, and now it's like we're heading toward this future where everything's fragmented and divided.
And that's exactly why this whole thing is so important.
Yeah.
It's not just about how many troops are being sent to Ukraine.
Yeah.
It's like a symbol, a sign that global power is shifting in a big way, and that could have massive consequences.
So let me ask you this. Why should the average person even care about this?
Right.
It's happening halfway across the world, so how does it affect them?
Well, these big geopolitical changes can actually affect everyone's lives.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it.
Okay.
It could change the prices of things you buy every day.
Huh.
It could destabilize the entire global economy.
Mm.
And of course, there's the risk that the conflict could escalate.
Yeah, nobody wants to see that.
Definitely not.
Okay.
I mean, we've already seen how the war in Ukraine has messed with energy prices and global food supplies.
Right.
If the conflict gets bigger or more intense,
Yeah.
those effects are just going to get worse.
And we can't forget about the whole nuclear thing either.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Both Russia and North Korea have nuclear weapons.
Right.
So if things escalate with them involved,
Right.
it brings up the very real possibility of nuclear war.
That's pretty scary.
It's definitely something we can't ignore.
Okay, so just to recap, it sounds like we're potentially looking at a major power shift with Russia, China, and North Korea maybe forming a tighter alliance.
Yeah.
And this could lead to a more divided world economy, a split internet, and a higher risk of conflict.
Exactly. We need to be paying attention to what's happening and understand what could happen,
Right.
both in the short term and down the road.
You know, as we're talking about all this, I keep thinking back to the U.S. election.
Yeah.
It's like we're at this crossroads, and the results could decide which way we go.
Right.
A change in U.S. foreign policy could totally change things.
Yeah, it could have this ripple effect across the whole world.
It really could.
You're right. That election could be a huge turning point in history.
Yeah.
It could shape global events for decades to come.
All right, so we've talked about a lot of heavy stuff here, and I don't know about you, but I'm kind of starting to feel the weight of all this.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense,
Well,
you know? The idea of North Korean troops in Ukraine, it's just crazy to think about all the things that could happen.
it is a lot.
Yeah.
It's complicated for sure, a lot of layers.
Mm.
And, we just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But like we said, it's a really big deal. The choices that get made in the next few weeks and months could change things for years to come.
No doubt. So let's try to play this out a little bit,
Okay.
What are some of the ways this could go from here?
Well, one possibility is that sending those troops is mostly symbolic.
Okay.
Like a way for North Korea to show they're on Russia's side
Yeah.
without actually changing much on the ground in Ukraine.
So like a show of force, but not really changing the actual fighting that much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we also got to think about, what if they do play a bigger role?
Right.
That's when things could really escalate and maybe even pull other countries into the conflict.
And then there's the whole U.S. election thing, too.
Oh, yeah.
We can't forget about that. A potential change in U.S. foreign policy just adds a whole other level of uncertainty.
Totally. If the U.S. pulls back its support for Ukraine, it could basically give Russia and its allies the green light to keep pushing.
Mm.
And that could mean a much longer conflict with global consequences.
And those consequences could be pretty serious.
No question. The stakes are super high.
Okay, so let's just for a minute imagine like a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
We're talking a war that drags on, maybe even spreads outside of Ukraine. Global tensions keep rising, maybe even economic instability. So in a situation like this where everything's so messy and uncertain, what can the average person even do to stay informed and, be a part of it?
Well, first of all, be careful about where you get your news from. Stick to sources that are known for being accurate.
Yeah.
Avoid the sensationalized stuff and the biased reports, especially from sources that might have an agenda.
That's good advice for any news, really.
It is, but it's extra important now because misinformation can spread so fast.
For sure. And, don't be afraid to look at things from different angles.
Exactly.
Read analyses from people who have different opinions, even if you don't agree with them. It's the best way to get a more complete picture,
Yeah, you got to step outside that echo chamber, challenge your own ideas, and be open to different interpretations of what's happening.
It's easy to get caught up in the emotions of it all, but it's important to try and stay objective.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, remember that you have a voice. Stay engaged with your elected officials. Advocate for policies that promote peace and stability and support organizations that are helping people who are caught in the middle of this conflict.
Yeah, it's easy to feel helpless when you're dealing with these big global issues, but you know what they say.
What's that?
Collective action can make a difference. Every voice counts.
It really does.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's leave our listeners with something to think about. You mentioned before the possibility of a new Cold War. If this whole thing with North Korea is like a preview of what's to come, what do you think the world will look like in 5 years?
That's the big question, isn't it? I don't have a crystal ball or anything, but if this trend of Russia, China, and North Korea working closer together keeps going, we could end up in a world that's way more divided than it is now. Imagine separate spheres of influence, different economic systems, different technology. It could have a huge impact on global security and prosperity. It's something we really need to pay attention to and think about carefully.
That's a powerful message and a good reminder to stay informed and to think critically about the future we're creating. This is just the start of the story, and we hope you'll keep digging into this topic and what it all means. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious.